Welcome to Math Blossoms, where growing in mathematics is natural. Today's lesson topic is how to plot points on a coordinate plane. Let's get prepared. In order to do today's lesson, you will need a pencil, preferably with an eraser in case you make some mistakes along the way. Also paper so that you can take notes, and graph paper so that we can make coordinate planes and graph points on them. A ruler or straight edge is optional. So if you have one nearby, it might be useful and helpful to help you draw some straight lines, but if you don't, it's perfectly fine. Don't forget to pause the video from time to time to answer practice questions. That is the best way to learn the math using these lessons is to pause, try to answer the question on your own first, and then compare it with the answer that I give to see if you get close or get it correct. Also, rewind the video if you need to review anything along the way. Okay, we're going to start growing our vocabulary. But before we do, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Mrs. G, your teacher, and I wanted to start today's lesson by clearing out our head of all the unnecessary thoughts that might get in our way and might distract us from the math learning today. So we're going to take 3 deep breaths. We're going to start by breathing in our nose and breathing out our mouth. We're going to hold the breath inside for 3 seconds, and we're going to do it 3 times. So the first breath, we're going to breathe in through the nose. Hold it for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And then breathe out your mouth. Okay, as we do this, try to forget all the things that might be distracting you so that we can laser focus in on the math that we're about to learn. Okay, second breath, breathe in through your nose. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Breathe out your mouth. And then the last breath, breathe in through your nose. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Breathe out your mouth. Now, if you need to do additional breaths along the way, feel free to pause the video and just, recenter yourself and try to get yourself more focused at any time throughout the video. Now, let's go ahead and start learning about the vocabulary. The first vocabulary word we're going to talk about is the coordinate plane. The coordinate plane is what you're looking at right there. It is this grid type pattern that is divided into 4 sections with a center point in the middle and 2 lines. The quadrants are the 4 sections that the lines divide the coordinate plane into. There are 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is when the x, y values of your coordinate points are both positive numbers. The second quadrant are when the x, y values of your coordinate point have a negative for the x and a positive number for the y. The third quadrant has both negative values for the x and the y. And then the fourth quadrant has a positive for the x value but a negative for the y. The origin is the point 0, 0, and it is right here in the middle of our coordinate plane. The x and y axes are the 2 axis lines that run vertically and also horizontally across the coordinate plane, meeting where they intersect at the origin point. The x-axis runs horizontally from left to right, and the y-axis runs vertically from top to bottom or from bottom to top. The last word we may see is ordered pair. An ordered pair is basically what we call a coordinate point. When we write it out, we write it in the form of x comma y. So the ordered pair does tell us where to go on the coordinate plane to make that exact point. Now, this lesson has 3 essential questions that we're going to learn today. The first essential question is describe what a 2-dimensional coordinate plane looks like, including its 4 sections and the center. The second question is compare and contrast between the x-axis and the y-axis on a coordinate plane, how it relates to ordered pairs. And the third question is how do you plot a point or ordered pair onto a 2-dimensional coordinate plane? Coordinate planes are two-dimensional, and they're also called Cartesian planes, and they're grids that contain two perpendicular axis lines, x and y, that intersect at a point called the origin. You can find any position on a coordinate plane by using coordinate points called ordered pairs. It's kind of similar to like a GPS system would use a specific point to locate a ship on the sea. So they're going to use like latitude and longitude lines to find those exact points on a grid. This first coordinate plane, you can see an x and y axis, and the center is the origin. Now this only counts from -6 to +6 on both axes lines. Coordinate planes can have more numbers than just 6. They can go as high as you need them to. So if you need to have a coordinate plane that goes all the way to 20 or 100 or whatever, that can happen. You can also count on your coordinate planes in numbers that are not necessarily 1. Now, most of the time you will see it in units of 1, but sometimes you might see a coordinate plane that has, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, and it might count by 5s, or it might count by 2s. So just be careful about that. But most of the time you will see it counting in 1s. The second one does have the quadrants listed. So you've got quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. And also the origin point is listed in the middle here. And then the third coordinate plane we see here, it only goes up to 5 from -5. We have actually plotted the ordered pair 2, 3 here. That means we went 2 along the x-axis and then 3 in the positive direction on the y-axis in order to make that point. Parts or sections of the coordinate plane. So quadrant 1 here in the upper right corner is where we typically start plotting a lot of points because they're a little bit easier because they are all positive values. Quadrant 2, we have our negative values on the x, but the positive values will be the y. And then on quadrant 3, both the x values and the y values are negative. And then the last quadrant, quadrant 4 here, that's when we have a positive on the x, but a negative on the y. A quadrant is one of 4 parts or sections of any two-dimensional coordinate plane. The first quadrant, or quadrant 1, is located in the upper right section because that is where the x and y values are both positive numbers. The origin point, or the ordered pair 0, 0, is used to designate the very center of the coordinate plane. The origin point also represents the starting point when you begin to plot a coordinate point or ordered pair onto the coordinate plane. So basically, when you're plotting points, you're going to start right here in the center and then move from that center point out. Axes on the coordinate plane. So there are 2 axes lines on the coordinate plane. That would be your x-axis, which is the horizontal line going left to right or right to left. And then the y-axis, which is the vertical line going north to south or south to north or top to bottom, however you want to say it. Here is an example of our x-axis, and here's an example of our y-axis. And of course, the point where they meet in the center is the origin. Now, how do we plot these ordered pairs? So we're going to plot some pairs together. Now, I have typed some instructions on here. However, the more you do this, the more you will not rely on instructions to help you. At first, they are useful because if you forget what to do next, you can always kind of look at the instructions and see what comes next. But after a while, after you practice this, it becomes natural and you won't have to look at the instructions every time. So let's go ahead and start by plotting the first ordered pair here, 2, 3. So if I'm looking at the first step, it says begin at the origin point. And then step 2 says look at the x value in your ordered pair. Is it positive or negative? Well, my x value here is a positive 2. Then it says in step 3, if it's a positive, then move right on the x-axis. So since I'm here in the center, I'm going to move right 2 spaces along that x-axis. Now, I'm not going to make my point yet because I still need to do the y value. But right now, I'm right here. Now, if you look at the y, which is step 4, the y is positive as well. So if it's positive in step 5, it says starting at where you moved to on the x-axis, Move up on the y-axis if it's positive, and then move down if it's negative. So we do have a positive, so we are going to move up. So once again, we're starting in the middle. The x is telling us to move to the right 2 times, and now we're going to move up 3 times on the y. That's where we're going to make our first point. We're going to label that point by drawing a circular dot at the intersection where we moved. And we're going to label that point 2, 3. Now let's look at the second point, -2, +3. So we're starting at the origin once again. Is our x positive or negative? Well, this time it is a -2, which means we don't go right. We're going to go left. So we're going to go 1, 2. Now our y value is still a +3, which means we still need to go up 3 units or 3 spaces. So we're going to make our point right here. That's -2, +3. So we're going to write our label as -2, +3. Our third point is -2, -3. So again, we're going to start at the center point or the origin. And this time we're going to go negative or left on the x-axis 2 spaces. But instead of going up on y, we have to move down because it's a negative y this time. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to make our point right here. And this is going to be -2, -3. Now the fourth point here is +2, -3. So again, we're going to start here in the center. This time we're going to move to the right on the x-axis because that is our positive direction. So we're going to go 1, 2 on the x-axis. And the y value is negative. So we need to move down on the y 3 spaces again. Make a point right here. And it's going to be 2, -3 this time. Now there are 2 additional points down here that I would like to show you, and that's whenever you have zeros in your ordered pair. So the first value here, the first ordered pair, we have 0, 5. So that means our x value is 0, but our y value is 5. So we don't move anything when it's a 0 because 0 cannot be positive or negative. 0 is just 0. So when we're on our origin point and you see a 0 where the x is supposed to go, that means we don't have to move it left or right. We just stay where we're at. But the y is telling us to move in the positive direction up 5 spaces. So we're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to make our point right here. And we're going to label that 0, 5. The last point is 5, 0. That means on the x-axis, we need to move in the positive direction 5 spaces. But the y value is 0, which means we don't move up or down. So we're just going to make our point right here on the x-axis. And that's going to be our point 5, 0. Now, one way to remember which number comes first and which number comes second is that they're in alphabetical order. So the x always comes before y in the alphabet. So that means you can hopefully remember that in an ordered pair, the x always comes before the y when you list them. One of the things also to mention is when you're looking at these 2 points here with the zeros, notice that when the x here is 0, it fell on the y-axis. The actual point ends up on the y-axis somewhere. But when the y value is 0, the point falls on the x-axis here. Now it's your turn to try and grow a flower blossom. So go ahead and try to answer these questions. I'm going to ask you to pause, take as much time as you need while we pause to answer the question, and then I will give you the answer after a count of 3. So go ahead and pause. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this question was to locate and label the origin and the 4 quadrants that make up the coordinate plane. So the first quadrant is quadrant 1, where the values of the x and the y are both positive. The second quadrant is quadrant 2, which means the x values are negative, but the y values are positive. Quadrant 3 has both negative values for the x and the y. And then quadrant 4 has positive values for the x, but negative values for the y. So which of the quadrants would contain the point -5, +1? Well, without graphing it, we should see that it will be in quadrant 2 somewhere, because that is where our points contain negative values for the x and positive values for the y. Now it's time to try and grow another blossom. So plot the following ordered pairs on the coordinate plane. And this time you can use a table to list the points if it helps you. So here are the points. And here is a table that may or may not give you some assistance. So go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to count to 3 and then I'll give you some answers. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's go ahead and plot A, B, C, and D. So A, we have a positive value for the x and a negative value for the y. That means we're going to go right on the x-axis and down on the y-axis. So starting at the origin point, we're going to go right 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to go down 7 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and make our point. Whoa. Sorry about that, guys. My pointer's messed up here. Okay, let's try that again. Starting at the origin point, we're going 4 spaces and then 7. There we go. And there's our point A. Now let's try plotting point B. Point B is negative on the x value, but positive on the y. That means we're going to go left this time, and then also up. So we're going to start at the origin. We're going to go left -1. And then the y means we go up to 2. And that's going to be our point B. And then plotting point C, we have a 0 for the x, so there's no direction to go there. But there is a negative on the y, which means we are going to have to move down 5. So starting here at the origin, moving down 5. I'm going to plot that point there, and that's going to be plot point C. And then the last point is -10, -3, point D. Both the x and the y are negative. That means for the x-axis, we need to go left. On the y-axis, we need to go down. So starting at the origin, we're going to go left 10 spaces. Then we're going to go down 1, 2, 3. Label that one D. And now you're done. Your turn to try and grow a third blossom. We're going to this time graph triangle ABC on the coordinate plane, and we can also use the table again to help us if we need to. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to hit pause, and I will count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so A, there's a 0 for the x value, which means we don't go left or right. We just stay at the origin on x. But on y, we do have a positive value, which means we need to go up on the y to the 8. So let's start here at 0 and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's where we're going to make our point for A. The second point is B, and B has a positive value for the x, but a negative value for the y. That means we're going to go right on the x-axis and then down on the y-axis. So starting at the origin point, we're going to go right 5 spaces and then down 3. There's where our B is going to be located. The third point is C, and the C has a -5, -3, so they're both negative on the x and the y. That means on the x-axis we go left this time, and on the y-axis we go down. So we're going to count from the origin point, -5, and then -3. Now, since this is a triangle, we're going to go ahead and connect our points. So A is going to connect to B. B is then going to connect to C, and then we'll connect C back up to the top A. Triangle ABC. Now the fourth, your turn to try and grow a blossom. We have two things we're going to graph here. We're going to graph line segment EF and then just line GH as well. Now the difference being a line segment here has two endpoints. The lines always extend for infinity on both sides, so the notation for them are different. When you graph these, you're going to have two endpoints, E and F. With this line, it could literally be extended in either direction further out if you need it. So let's see if we need to use a table. I will pop one up for you, and I will go ahead and ask you to hit pause, and I will count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now let's start with E. E has a positive X value and a negative Y value. That means I need to go to the right on my X axis and then down on my Y axis. So we're starting at the origin here. We're going to go to the right 4 spaces and then down 7. That's going to be our E. Point F, we have a negative on the X value and a positive on the Y value. That means we're going to go left on the X, and then on the Y, we're going to actually go up. So we're starting at the origin. This time we're going to go -1 and then +2 up. And that's where our point is for F. Now, since this is a line segment, I'm going to go ahead and connect the dots here. And now we have our line segment EF. Now for G, we have a 0 for the X and a negative value for the Y, which means we don't move the X value left or right, but we do need to move the Y down. So we're going to start here at the origin. We're going to move down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's where our point is located for G. Our last point in this series is -10, -3. So we have both negatives for X and Y, which means we're going to go left on the X and then down on the Y. So starting at the origin, we go left 10 spaces and we end up there. Then we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, and we're going to make a point. We're going to label that one H. Then we're going to connect our 2 dots with a line here. And then since this is an actual line, if you wanted to extend it out and draw an arrow, you can. So we could extend it out a little bit. My line's a little crooked, but there we go, line GH. Now, describe what a two-dimensional coordinate plane looks like, including its 4 sections and the center. So again, I want you to pause and try to answer this essential question, and then I will give you an answer. Okay, the answer is a two-dimensional coordinate plane is a grid that contains 2 perpendicular axis lines, X and Y, that intersect at a point called the origin. We divide coordinate planes into quadrants 1, 2, 3, and 4, starting in the upper right corner and moving counterclockwise around the origin point. The second pause and answer the essential question is to compare and contrast between the x-axis and the y-axis on a coordinate plane and how it relates to ordered pairs. So go ahead and pause and try to answer on your own. And it can be in your own words, it's okay. The x-axis goes horizontally through the origin point. The x value of an ordered pair tells us where to move the point left or right. The y-axis goes vertically through the origin point, and the y value of an ordered pair tells us where to move the point up or down. How do you plot a point or ordered pair onto a two-dimensional coordinate plane? So once again, I want to pause and let you try to answer that one on your own first. Okay, first, begin at the origin point, or the point 0, 0. Look at the x value in your ordered pair. If the x is positive, move right on the x-axis. If the x is negative, move left on the x-axis. Next, look at the y value in your ordered pair. Starting where you moved to the x-axis, move up if the y is positive, and move down if the y is negative. Draw a tiny circular dot or point at the intersection where you ended the movement and label it. All right, so we're almost finished. We do need to review our vocabulary one more time, and we have this cute little kitten that's going to help us with that task. The first word is a coordinate plane. Remember, a coordinate plane is a grid or a graph that is divided into 4 sections with a center point that's called the origin, and the 4 sections are quadrants. The x and y axis are the 2 lines that divide up the coordinate plane. The x-axis runs horizontally, left to right or right to left, and the y-axis runs vertically, up or down to up. And the last vocabulary word is ordered pair. So every ordered pair is always in the form of x comma y, and that's always in alphabetical order. So it'll tell you how far to move on your x-axis and how far to move on your y-axis before you make that point. Great work, everybody. So a bouquet of math blossoms have opened up in your mind. So to further improve your math language skills, remember to practice every day by doing your classwork and doing your homework. Study at least 10 minutes daily. Maybe you might want to review what you did in class that day or the day before. Also, don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. So get a study partner, or ask a family member, or also your teacher. If your teacher is available, ask your teacher. Also, don't be afraid to make mistakes. We learn best by sometimes making mistakes and then correcting them. So make sure that if you make a mistake, just try not to make it over and over again. Try to learn from it and try to correct it so that you don't continue to do so. And then always try. Learning math can be a little hard at times, and it can be a little frustrating, but don't give up. Just stop, take your 3 breaths, and try again. And generally, you will get it eventually. So don't ever think you can't do it, and don't ever give up. Now, I'd like to thank you guys for watching Math Blossoms in this lesson, and I wanted to ask you to join me for the next lesson in this series, which is on Introduction to Transformations on the Coordinate Plane. This is a really awesome geometry topic that I love talking about, so feel free to join us for that one. And it has been a pleasure, so I would like to take this time to say it was lovely teaching you math today.